Hello, everybody. We are back on The Scoop, Season 5, Episode 10. I'm John DeCarlo. With me today, Kyle Gauss and Graham Foley. What's up, gentlemen? How you doing?
Nada. I am ready to talk some football. We have a short week this week.
Short week.
Short week for everybody.
Yeah.
How do you guys prepare for the short week? What are the challenges? What are the challenges of a short week?
Well, I'm looking up Dallas Keuchel's splits against the Cardinals, and I'm hoping it's a 5 o'clock first pitch, so that way the game's pretty much over by the time.
Was it Thursday?
Yeah, it's Thursday. It's either 5 or 6, depending on what happens tonight. And since it's the Nationals playing, I'm assuming
they're going to lose.
they're going to lose.
Right.
So you're going to be dual watching Braves and
Well, I'm
Temple
hoping that the
football.
Braves are like taken care of by the time Temple game comes on. Like they're up 7-1 or something, and they've turned it over to that revamped bullpen, and we're off to the
Wait,
races.
when's first pitch for them?
It was to be determined based upon
TBD.
who plays the Dodgers.
That's right,
It
right.
affects who between the Cardinals and Braves.
If you are a high school student playing a sport in New Jersey, you are not going to get written about on Thursday because I'm turning in my roundup super early and just getting out so I can watch some of this Temple
What's
game.
your roundup on then?
It's going to be like whatever games happened at 3 o'clock and are there by 5 o'clock, that's getting in the paper. The rest, sorry.
Might as well not even play.
Yeah, exactly.
Graham Foley talking about mailing it in his Inquirer internship.
Hey, that's the part-time work. That's
This
different.
is South Jersey you're doing?
South Jersey.
You
Yeah.
should talk about Chris Long had back-to-back 200-yard games.
Yes,
Talked
he
about
did.
Chris Long on the. Well, actually, Tom McNew. Oh no, Jaden Campana wrote about that
Just
last
set
Friday.
his school record for receiving yards in the game. And Fran Brown convinced him to come play defensive back.
Mm-hmm. As far as we know.
What do you mean? That he could play
Well, I
wide
mean, that
receiver?
he could end up at either
Yeah,
position.
he can play
Next
quarterback
level,
for all I care.
so. Yeah.
Temple about to be made.
Yeah. Anyway, got a Georgia Tech win to talk about. Temple beat Georgia Tech on Saturday. The short week we're referring to is Temple playing at ECU Thursday night in its American Athletic Conference opener. ECU actually draws pretty well, so that'll be an interesting road atmosphere for Temple. Speaking about recruitment, check out the website if you haven't. Sam Newman has a story up on Chaz Wallace, a defensive tackle from the Avalon School down in Maryland, one of Temple's verbal commitments. Got some recruiting scoop to tease later on when we talk about basketball. But let's talk about this Georgia Tech game. 24-2.
One of the weirder games you've covered in recent memory?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, just the subplot. I just thought, I mean, obviously the game turned out to be kind of anticlimactic. We said Temple should win this game. If all things are equal, they did. Obviously took a couple big plays. The game, I think, could have turned out differently had Isaiah Graham Mobley not gotten that forced fumble right by the goal line there. But, I mean, Georgia Tech just, didn't really, the game almost kind of like seemed like an afterthought to them. Sam was over at Jeff Collins' press conference. He gave a lot of credit to Temple, kind of tapped himself on the shoulder, tipped the cap in his own direction for recruiting some of the roster. But, yeah, interesting game. But, I mean, Temple needed to bounce back and get a win. They probably could have won by a wider margin had Anthony Russo not thrown that pick. But, yeah, I mean, you had the stat, right? The first time in their FBS era that they've held a team to 2 points.
Yeah.
Exactly 2 points.
Yeah, and I saw something on Reddit the other day where it's the first 24-2 finish in a college football game since like 1961.
Oh,
So not a very common
A 50-year scoregami.
50 years ago. I just think it was game plan-wise. We talked about, hey, it could have been a bigger difference. I think game plan-wise for Temple was, like Rod Carey talked about, to get out to an early lead and just grind clock. But I think on defense, it was just no huge plays, right? Give up some big plays. They played off a lot in pass coverage. I think in hindsight, they were pretty confident that the only way that Georgia Tech was really going to score against them is by broken play, that where an ACC athlete beats your cornerback and they just chuck it up. Once they got into the red zone, they had 3 turnovers within the 30. Once they get to that close, I don't think they had any fear of Tobias Oliver's ability to thread a needle and work on timing routes and really take them apart. And you saw that with the Benny Walls interception. He threw really far behind them. It was a bad throw that Benny Walls just picks off. So I think it was a good game plan by Rod Carey's staff. It wasn't a sexy game plan. They didn't put up a lot of yards. They only scored 24 points, 7 of which came off of defensive fumble return for a touchdown, also by Benny Walls. But I think it was when Rod Carey plays a Power 5 team, I think he has these conservative game plans that have worked for the most part. I mean, he has, 6 Big Ten wins now. Not that this was a Big Ten win, but against Maryland, too. 6 Big Ten wins.
And if it works, it works. It's almost more satisfying, I feel like, for Temple fans to look at that scoreline and be like, oh, you got 2 points.
Did you see somebody and I apologize for not knowing your username, somebody on our game thread wrote, 2 points sounds about right. I'd rather just have 2 than 0.
No, exactly. And it just makes it all the more embarrassing. I wasn't able to be at that game, but you just also think about how different it would be if that crazy fumble at the goal line didn't happen. It still looks like the game plan would have worked out, and it probably would have been 24-9 or 24-7. But that was definitely a big turning point, I think.
Well, the other thing too now moving forward is, I mean, not the one area, but one of the main areas that people are going to focus in on is the play of Anthony Russo. Now, on one hand, Rod Carey will say, and I get what he's saying. I think people hear this and they cringe, and it sounds like coach speak. Rod said it on Saturday. He said it again today. Again, we're recording this on a Tuesday. He said it at his weekly Tuesday media availability. He said, look, Anthony did exactly what we asked him to do in the game plan. It's not always easy to, generally speaking, run on first down, run on second down, throw on third, keep the sticks moving. We asked him to do that. I asked him today if, is there any trick to, getting someone to just trying to stay away from making that big throw. And he's like, you just have to realize that there are still points on the board there. If you listen to the interviews from Saturday, I asked Anthony, I said, are you just in a spot where you feel like you can kind of get away with those throws because you have the arm talent? He's like, yeah, I just have to stop doing that. And on that throw, it's third down, third and goal from the 10. He tries to muscle a throw into Isaiah Wright. Georgia Tech did nothing with the turnover, but that's hurt them. That's just been kind of his Achilles heel. I do agree that after that, he must have executed the game plan pretty well because, it does take, we don't know how often he's audibling or checking in and checking out of stuff, but, obviously Ray Davis, we'll talk about that. He goes by, he still wants his name to be written as Raymond Davis, but he goes by Ray Davis. 29 carries, 135 yards. Those are both career highs for him in terms of carries and yards and touchdowns too. No. Or is that tying a career high? Did he have two? He had two in the opener,
He had
right?
a rushing and receiving in the opener.
Yeah, so the two touchdowns tied.
Career high in rushing touchdowns.
Career high in rushing touchdowns.
And,
so
just a quick question. How do you spell Ray? It's just R-E?
So no, you don't. You spell Raymond.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's
It just wants to be
Raymond
called-
and Ray.
yeah.
I would think, though, we were talking about this before. We were told that it's still Raymond in type. I would think it's R-A apostrophe.
Okay.
I think it's R-A hyphen. R-E hyphen.
Yeah, R-E. That's what I was saying.
R-E hyphen.
but I mean, Russo's probably going to give the same answer. But again, he talked about this on Saturday. He has to get away from thinking, okay, I've got the arm talent to make this throw. I just have to kind of live to fight another day.
Right.
But that is going to, well, I guess it sort of bit him at Buffalo. A lot went wrong at Buffalo, and one of those interceptions, went off Jose Barbone's hand. But that's the one area that has to come around for them. Obviously, the defense played well. Running game was what it was. No disasters on special teams.
No. Ronald Gaines looks like he snapped well. I mean, Adam Berry wasn't great, but he had 4 or 5 or whatever actual punts. That they actually went far, and now Temple is only number 129 in the nation in net punting.
Moving on up.
Yeah,
moving on
Slow
up.
Slow climb.
And credit to Russo, too, in every interview post-game during the week. He has been acknowledging where he does wrong. He has been kind of owning up to his mistakes. He's not kind of talking around it. And he does seem very mature with addressing the offense and how he's not going to be totally featured like, his deep arm can handle for every game. And I think he's definitely handled it well.
Yeah, his final numbers there, 9 of 22 passing, 127 yards, 1 pick, no touchdowns. Conversely, on the other side for Georgia Tech, James Graham, 10 of 24 passing with the pick. Tobias Oliver, 4 of 11 passing. Of course, that interception from Graham was the one that Benny Walls picked off in the end zone, returned at 65 yards. Oliver got 68 yards on the ground running, but again, just 2 points to show for for anything on offense. And well, actually, no, that comes from the safety, so they didn't score at all on offense.
Right. I mean, real quick back to Anthony Russo. I do think it's a bit of coach speak and a bit of Rod Carey wanting to protect his quarterback.
Sure.
Because that's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I do think there's some truth in it. I mean, it's not like he missed on, hey, Jaden Blue's 25 yards wide open and you screwed it up. He did miss on one long throw, but there was a lot of timing routes he messed up on. It's just that first interception is just, you're a redshirt junior. You have to know that, hey, if you go up 3-0 against a team that is really bad on offense, every 3 points is going to be a colossal amount. And, you would hope that Anthony Russo rebounds with a much better game against an ECU team that is not nearly as good as Georgia Tech. Not that Georgia Tech's great, but...
Anything else stand out about this game?
ECU or Georgia Tech? Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech. What stood out to me was exactly kind of what we expected. That defense is legit. I think they have very good cornerbacks. They had the ability to kind of shut down passing. Temple's offensive line surprised me. Not that Temple's offensive line was necessarily a question mark coming into the season, but the way that they just really kind of got push and had separation at the line of scrimmage, they completely dominated Georgia Tech's defensive line when it comes to the running game. Ray Davis looked good. He looked really good for a true freshman, but he had some big holes at times. His first touchdown, he went basically untouched. He had the ability to kind of like juke stick when he didn't need to. He didn't have to do all that much. I think Jovan Fair played a dominant game. I think Temple's offensive line deserved a lot of credit. They kept Russo clean except for the one sack at the end, which Russo probably shouldn't take that sack anyway. But regardless, I would say, yeah, they had a pretty dominant game.
Rod also mentioned today that, they're not great third down numbers, but Temple did go 7 of 16 on third down, which was an improvement over what they had done before. So he's like, on third down, there were times where he did keep the sticks moving. Again, we asked him to run and run and run, and he makes the throw.
Yeah, but then part of that's also because of the game plan. It's like Mike Yuremevich has talked about how you do better on third down by doing better in first and second down. Right. When you're running the ball that much and you're dealing with 3rd and 2 instead of 3rd and 10, it's easier.
Yeah. Well, let's look at this ECU team. Different coach, different coaching staff, a quarterback, Holton Ayers, who went 0 for 4 in last year's game. He's a dual threat guy. Actually was a fairly highly recruited guy, had some decent offers. We were talking about this before we recorded today. He did have a Florida offer very, very early on, we're thinking.
Yeah, it's like
his Rivals profile has him listed with a Florida offer.
Right.
But
do you remember how like Isaiah Lewis used to have offers from like A-10 schools, and then he didn't? Remember,
the basketball
player, like,
yeah.
you get these offers early on. I just don't think Florida was there. I know it came down to East Carolina and North Carolina State, which is still an ACC school.
Good get for
ECU, but he wasn't turning down the SEC.
So he's their quarterback now. He's their second leading rusher. Has 3 rushing touchdowns. Has completed about 54% of his passes, 913 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 picks. Blake Prohl, the son of former NFL receiver Ricky Prohl, is their leading receiver. Panthers. And
that would make sense, right? He probably stayed in Carolina, and then his kid's there.
20 catches, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I mean, they're better than last year. This is still a game that
I don't know.
Tad better.
I don't think we know. They've beaten 2 FCS teams and a very mediocre ODU team.
And got blown out by Navy.
They got blown out by Navy.
Right, which
lost pretty soundly to North Carolina State. Like, I don't know if they're better. Probably just because Mike Houston's a better coach, but I think it's like to a lesser extent what Georgia Tech's going through with Jeff Collins, where it's going to be an adjustment. I think there's an adjustment to Mike Houston. And that noise you hear is John picking up papers off the ground. A little inside baseball for you.
What? That didn't happen at all.
But yeah, I mean, they put 6 points at North Carolina State, 10 points against Navy. And one thing, like 10 points against Navy can always be a little misleading, right? Because Navy grinds it out. But Navy gets 42 points.
And they passed for like 180 yards in that game. Like, they weren't just running the ball. They found holes all over the defense.
Let's say there's a reason Temple's a 13-point favorite on the road.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Because, I mean, the one thing that is interesting, not that this program hasn't dealt with it before, it's different year, different season, everything. Back in 2015, they needed to win at ECU before that Notre Dame game meant anything, and they always talk about how it's a tricky atmosphere down there. The one
Another
thing
blackout.
Well, yeah. So they got this. Their announced attendance for
if
the William & Mary
Braves lose
game
earlier in the game, I'm gonna be having a blackout on my own.
Oh my God! Over one playoff game.
Oh yeah. Wow. They haven't won a playoff series since 2000. Graham wasn't even alive.
They haven't won a playoff series
was
since
alive
2000?
in 2000 or 2001. Yeah.
No way.
I'm pretty sure it's 2000.
Really?
Braves last playoff series.
It's
win.
really been that long.
18 years. 2001. Since the last time
I
they
had
won.
no idea it had been that long.
Well, their division streak ended in 04, 05. 05.
It's
and
about
then
to
since
take off
then,
again.
Yeah, it's about to get at least 6 or 7 here.
Probably
not 14. So I think the Dodgers are probably going to surpass their 14 total.
They might. Yeah, legitimately might.
Really, but anyway, East Carolina, the Pirates.
Ken Rose
best ECU alumni.
We talked about this last year.
Sandra Bullock.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think Vince McMahon's also from there. Vince McMahon, but Sandra Bullock. When they joined the conference, I ran an article like, in like 2013 or 14 or whatever, I ran an article like, welcome to the new guys. And it was all the conference. I had best alums.
To the new guys.
And I think it was Sandra Bullock and Vince McMahon.
I think I said Jeff Blake. You remember Jeff Blake? NFL quarterback?
Yeah.
Not more famous than Vince McMahon or Sandra Bullock.
Love Sandra Bullock. This Congeniality.
Yeah. It's a great movie.
It's a great movie. His donuts.
That's all I can really add.
She's not like other girls.
Is that your favorite Sandra Bullock movie?
Oh, The Blind Side. Here's a take. My roommate had the other day that every sports movie is bad.
Everyone.
Period.
What?
I disagree with that simply because of the Blind Side. I think
wholeheartedly.
Miracle is
What's-
great. I think The Sandlot's good. Would you say?
I don't agree with your roommate
I
whatsoever.
don't at all.
sports
He
movie
said
is
he said
bad?
he started pulling back
It's
on
one
the
of the
take.
worst takes I've ever heard.
Wow, roast him.
Everyone.
He started pulling back
The
on the
Natural.
take.
Who is this? I love The Natural.
Sandlot.
His name is Kevin Rice at the Kevin Rice. He writes for Liberty Ballers. He likes to put out some
Not
takes
anymore, he
sometimes.
I'm sure he's a nice guy, but that's a terrible take. Every sports movie bad.
He said he started
Rocky.
walking it back a little bit but he was like, I put out the take. I have to defend it.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
Because occasionally you get into you make a take and you just have to live and die by that take. I
And
get that
That's what
part.
he's doing. Yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna be a die one. Other
Yeah.
good Sandra Bullock movie, Speed. The original Speed was
Speed,
good.
Keanu Reeves.
Sure.
Speed 2, Keanu didn't come back, but Sandra did. It was on a boat, I believe.
That I did not watch.
Have you? I'm
Gravity was eh.
not trying to get us too far off track. Did you see the Between Two Ferns movie on that?
I haven't watched it yet. I'm finishing up Peaky Blinders and I'm gonna watch it.
He makes an appearance on that. Very funny.
Keanu does?
Yeah.
Everyone loves Keanu now.
Yeah.
People are coming back on the Keanu bandwagon.
I'd say our best movie was Speed, but yeah, she was good. She's good in The
She
Blind
was in
Side.
Crash.
ECU's red zone offense.
It's gonna crash.
Natural. I thought you told me once that you didn't like The Natural and you thought Bull Durham was a hell of a lot better. I must be thinking of somebody else.
I would agree that Bull Durham's better, but no, I like The Natural.
I love The Natural. Have you seen The Natural before?
I actually haven't. I should. I know. of
My
it.
natural
I never
story
saw it.
is one year when I was commuting to Temple my sophomore year, I used to, obviously take the train back, and I would occasionally skip class, get on a train, and go to the plaza or the mall, the piazza. Market East?
Northern Liberties?
No, well, it's at Market East. right?
Gallery?
The Gallery. I'm sorry,
Oh,
the Gallery. I would go to the Gallery, and I would go to the Five Below and just buy a DVD to watch on the way home, and I'd buy and watch The Natural on the way home to Downtown.
That's not a bad idea.
Did you have a 2
Back
hour
before
drive
Netflix.
Home? Or 2 hour ride home?
It's like an
It's
hour and
a half.
40 minutes, hour and 30.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'd sit there and watch most of the movie and be like, oh, this is a
Natural.
movie to watch.
I think you'd like The Natural.
Okay.
You're an old soul. You'd like that.
Yeah.
Old
Sure.
Anyway.
We're off
So,
to a hell of a
I don't
start.
yeah.
wow.
How we got on
It's a good thing I have to leave in 15
ECU?
minutes.
Yeah, ECU for famous alums. They did get a shade over 38,000 fans for the William and Mary game. So they do draw down there.
They canceled classes.
Yeah, they canceled class.
For Temple.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
The
I mean, it's no
game's at
shot.
night.
It's no shot against. I mean, it's no shot against Temple. But
No,
I mean,
sure,
they must
yeah.
take their football seriously down there. They were again. We get to see the last 10, 15 minutes of practice every Tuesday, which isn't much. Now I can't complain because we got a ton of access in the preseason. But they were, as you walked up to Chodoff Field today, they were practicing with crowd noise, and that's why people don't think of ECU as this juggernaut program. But they do draw down there. The game's going to be on ESPN, not ESPNU or
The flagship.
ESPN3. The flagship, as Rod said today. We're on the flagship, right? So yes, they beat ECU 49-6 last year. Again, Holton Ayers was not their quarterback. He took 4 snaps last year, or I shouldn't say 4 snaps, threw 4 passes last year. But again, this year, he has more interceptions than touchdowns. Is a dual threat guy. He's a lefty, right?
Sure.
I think he's left-handed.
Been breaking down a lot of Holton film.
Yeah. Well, you and Ray Dinger just cutting up Holton Ayers' film. I don't know. I mean, is the one reason of concern here?
Somebody didn't turn their phone off.
Just when you come back in, start at I don't know is the one reason of concern, and we'll make a note of where this is.
That's when you could have hit me with, I have a real job. Also, your password's 48 digits long.
Michael Vick just put this on his Facebook story.
How to drop girls' pants.
Basically.
So I think we can agree that this is a game that Temple should win, but is the one area of concern here just going on the road? And again, I'm not trying to make this place sound like Death Valley, but going on the road after, and one of the things that they got asked about today, predictably so, was you're coming off a big win in the sense that there was a storyline there. You beat an ACC team. It's your former coach, but you're coming off a big home win, even though we know Georgia Tech isn't all that good. And now you're going on the road again against a team that you should beat. It's on a short week. Do you know how to win this time? Is the area of concern that they're going on the road in a somewhat decent to good atmosphere?
Yeah. I think you pretty much touched on all of it. I think they haven't won on the road yet under this coaching staff. If 3-0 at home, 0-1 on the road. It's a short week, a week that you just gave your bell cow back 29 carries and 30 touches. Jagger Gardner got dinged up towards the end. Rod Carey said, oh, yeah, well, Kyle Dobbins was ready to go. But, yeah, but he didn't go. So
Right.
you have 2 guys there that got about 45, 48 touches. 4 days later, they got to go back out there. They're out there without their star defensive tackle, Dan Archibald, for the first half because he got ejected for targeting. I think it kind of sets itself up to be a non-pretty game, kind of the game that you just go down there on a Thursday, and if you could say right now that they're going to win 24-13, you sign off on that right now because it's a win.
Right.
I would think that it's just a tough game in the sense of logistics and turnaround time, not necessarily in talent and opponent.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's more the turnaround time. If it is that raucous of an atmosphere, they've done well with their signal calling, with their up-tempo offense this year. That I think that, can be an advantage to them. And they all talked about, too, in the press conferences with Buffalo, just not, like, getting up for the game, basically. And I forget who said it. They came to the town, and it was a sleepy town, and he said that got in their head, and it just wasn't exciting. So,
was that Brandon? When Brandon Mack was talking to Kendall, I mean, he basically admitted that, we overlooked them.
And I think, with this game, at least you're going to an atmosphere you're going to get up for it. It's going to be an exciting one, and they're not going to overlook the team because the atmosphere won't let them in some ways.
I mean, I think a lot of this is revisionist history on my part, but like in the grand scheme of things, the Buffalo game didn't matter, right?
Right.
It's an out-of-conference game. You're probably not playing for a spot in the college football playoffs. This game matters.
Yeah.
This game is a conference game. You have to start off 1-0. If you need to be able to, you're going to follow this up with hosting Memphis, going to SMU. You still got to host UCF. You still got to go to Cincy. You're not going to win all those games. At a certain point, you're going to lose one of those games. You can't afford to lose a game against an inferior opponent like ECU if you want to have any chance at representing the East in the conference championship.
And if it really is this kind of non-football, effects that made them lose that game in Buffalo, then maybe it's helpful to have that kind of in your back pocket as a non-conference loss that gets you, to wake up for this one.
You mentioned Dan Archibong being out for the targeting call, so he's going to miss the first half. Rod Carey said today that Kevin Robertson, the JUCO transfer from
Fullerton College. He's originally from Maryland.
Right, so he'll sounds like he could get some snaps. Hasn't recorded a stat yet this year.
He hasn't played yet. Even the Bucknell game, he didn't play. I don't know if he was
all?
dinged up or what, but he didn't play.
So I mean, he's mentioned his name before.
He's the fifth defensive tackle.
They seem to like him, so it sounds like he'll get some snaps. I think Rod said today that Cromwell probably played his best game of the season against Georgia Tech.
He got in a couple shoving matches. If you watch like the highlights on like some like the touchdown stuff, it's a lot of where this would be a sack, I guess, but it's a lot of.
I think he'd have
Ramo.
to I think you'd have to, he calls him Ramo. You'd have to like what you see from Chris Banks so far, I think, right?
Yeah, as a redshirt freshman, I think Chris Banks is already carving out a role, and that's a spot where you'll see somebody like Ramo's graduating. Dan Archibong, I don't know. Does Dan Archibong have a monster end and leave a year early, or does he go somewhere, or is he back for senior year? I don't know. But I think that Chris Banks is carving out a role that you would expect for him to be the next guy up when defensive tackle spot comes.
Rod also talked today about...
Real quick, you would imagine they're going to start Karamo, right?
It's
probably Karamo and Dan Archibong, Karamo and Ifa Maje for the first half, and then
I would think so. I mean, it'll be interesting because again, they do rotate. I mean, he's been committed to rotating, going a deep on his defensive line with even DeAndre Kelly, of course, Dana Levine. He talked today about how he's been really happy not along the D line but at linebacker Isaiah Graham-Mobley. So he's been playing all three linebacker positions. We noticed that he gave, at least in the first half, a decent amount of rest to Chappelle Russell.
Yeah. And then towards the start of the second half, he gave a little bit of rest to Sean Bradley.
Right. So
there was times where, Isaiah Graham-Mobley. I used to always do that in like baseball video games where I had like 10 guys or 9 guys in my lineup that I wanted, so I'd rotate him in. Like, now you're playing first, now you're playing second, now you're playing third to generate at bats. He was generating reps for Isaiah Graham-Mobley.
There you go.
That's a great way to put it.
Game reference.
Because I'd be like, no, I want 9 guys to have 550 at bats, so I'll just rotate them in.
Should we play exit music for Graham as he
Yeah,
leaves for class now?
Graham, I'll drop a stat on my way out since Kyle usually does.
Any parting messages?
Yes, that ECU is only 9 of 20 in red zone opportunities and scoring touchdowns, and Temple's only allowed 2 touchdowns in the red zone in 12 opportunities. So the red zone could be key.
So that's a good stat because
stat.
That's the next level stat because with red zone offense, they're tied for 60 seconds. So you think like, okay, they're okay, but no, it seems like a lot of settling for field goals. We'll talk about their kicker. They have a very good kicker.
Mm-hmm. They're 17 of 20 in scoring. They make the field goals, but only 9 of 20 getting in the end zone.
They make the field goals.
17 of 20. That would be my 85% here.
They make the field goals. They put the ball between the uprights.
That's a good segue. I'm going to talk about that. Jake Verity is their kicker.
There you go.
Preseason all-conference guy. They're legitimately, they'll tout him out there up to 55. He has a 52 on his resume already. He's attempted up to 55s. I think he is a legitimate threat.
I was just going to unplug this.
It's fine.
It's fine. We'll just cut this out.
Yeah, we have the pause. It's fine. Just, Yeah, he actually might punt, too. If you really want to get into East Carolina roster here, John Young, their punter, might be out. Jake Verity has punted a little bit. He's averaged 43 yards a punt, which Temple would gladly take at this point. But yeah, he might end up being a dual threat guy. He has 10 or 13 for field goal, like I said, made a 52-yarder before, attempted at 55. I think he's a legitimate threat that they get anywhere close to Temple's side of the field, that he has the range to attempt a field goal.
Will Isaiah Wright ever break off a return this year, other than the 51-yarder?
Against Buffalo.
I
think we talked about this after the Maryland game. I really think part of being conservative against these Power 5 teams is being conservative in the return game too.
Right.
But you would hope so, because he's supposed to be an All-American kick returner. He is an All-American returner, but no, he hasn't really shown it yet.
That was going to be my next question to you. Do you think this is a game where, we have not seen Mike Yuremevich call a conference game yet? Do you think the playbook gets a little bit more expansive? Again, they're 3-1.
Right.
Again, the offense got put. The offense didn't play great at Buffalo, but it's just a weird game. A lot of mistakes. For the most part, you can't really argue with too much he's done as a play caller this year. But do you think he gets more expansive Thursday night?
I don't know.
On a short week might be tough.
I think the short week's the tough part, right? It's a short week. It's an atmosphere that the last thing you want to do on the road against a atmosphere like that, against a team that's not as talented as you, is for you to throw 2 picks in the first quarter.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that I think it's going to be an interesting balance. This is going to be why he makes the money that he makes to do this, because if this wasn't a short week, I would say the way you do this, like if Temple was coming off a bye, I would say the way you do this is you run the ball against them and you figure it out. You really grind it down. You physically impose your will. On the short week Ray Davis is 19 years old. He can bounce back a lot quicker than you and I could bounce back, but he still got hit 30 times in that game, let alone the blocks and stuff like that. So I think they are going to be a little more conscious of his reps. I think you're going to see closer to an expanded offense. I would expect the real true, this is what we want our offensive identity to be in a close game, would be against Memphis.
Right. We go to predictions, and we'll talk a little bit about Quincy Roche.
Yeah, we probably should have gotten Graham's prediction before we.
Well.
We'll
text him. Text him as we're talking here.
I'll just do the Graham impression. I'll do the Graham. You find out his prediction, and I will pretend it's him. But for my prediction, me, Kyle Gauss, I'm going to think that this ends up being a game kind of close to 2014, or 2015, I should say. I think they win this game. I think they win this game relatively soundly when you look at the final score. I don't think it's going to be obvious that they dominated this game. I would think that Temple wins this game, I'll say, similar to what I thought Georgia Tech was going to be. I'll say 27-13 or 27-14.
I'm going to say
27-14 is what I'm going with.
I'm going to say 30-20 with ECU trying for a 2-point conversion, 1 touchdown, and not getting it.
So you're going to say the Temple defense that just held Georgia Tech to 2 points, 0 points, because the 2 points came on offense, is going to give up 20 points to a team that put up 19 against William & Mary, 10 against Navy, 6 against North Carolina State.
I just feel like something's going to go. I think they'll win. I just have a feeling that something weird is going to happen on the road. There's going to be some sort of broken play that goes in ECU's favor, where somebody gets lost in coverage somehow. I agree. The defense played really, really well. I asked Jeff. I did this today.
Did you call him Jeff?
No. Well, so I started
Jeffrey.
asking Rod the question, and I wanted to ask about Jeff Knowles, and I said Jeff, and I was like,
I heard that. You're like, Jeff Knowles, your defensive coordinator. You know him?
Yeah. Was not thinking of Jeff Collins, but no, he's done a great job this year. I just think on a short week something weird could happen. I still think they'll win.
Yeah, I think it's just ECU is also coming off a short week. They play on they played on Saturday too. They're 119th in passing efficiency on offense. They're 100, and I wrote over this, but I think it's 111th in scoring offense. 107 in passing offense. Their red zone offense, we talked about before, they sell for a lot of field goals. They're bad on special teams. I kind of have trouble seeing this offense moving the ball against Temple. To be honest, the reason I said 13, 14 points is I think that maybe there's a Temple turnover in there that gives them kind of short field. But I think Temple's far and away the better team on this. I just wonder how effective Temple's offense is going to be. The conspiracy theorist in me, or not conspiracy theorist, but the person that's maybe trying to read the tea leaves a little too much, is I wonder if they do decide, you know what, let's expand the offense of this. We have a quarterback that people are starting to question that probably could stand to benefit from a 300-yard, 4-touchdown game. Part of me wonders if they do say, no, let's start this off with a bang and let's get him right before Memphis.
Yeah, a confidence booster type of game. I agree. So we'll see what happens there. Mentioned the Quincy Roche stuff. Quincy Roche, in case you haven't seen or noticed, did get the final single digit. He is now wearing number 9 moving forward. As Rod Carey said today, that's a big deal. They typically have reserved that one for defensive linemen. So
we're talking Michael Dogby, Matt Ioannidis.
Muhammad
Wilkerson. Sharif was 6. Jacob Martin was 9.
Jacob Martin. So a bunch of guys who've been in the NFL. So talked to Quincy Roche about that today and what it means to him. And here's what Quincy had to say. We'll play the whole interview for you. It's about shade over 3 minutes long. So most of this is Quincy talking about getting number 9 and a little bit about just where he is as a pass rusher in this week's game.
Is there anything from the Rod press conference you want to put in?
Talking about IGN and Robertson. What did you learn? He said, I didn't like.
Hello.
What did you learn from losing to Buffalo the first time around? I didn't like the way I did the schedule.
I mean, we don't have to. Let's not force it, fellas.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, we'll keep going.
What was it? Isn't that Colin Thompson? We don't have to force it, fellas.
Yeah, oh wait. Oh right.
Oh well. Well, you haven't talked about Quincy yet. Like you just said, oh yeah, number 9, blah blah. We can still put.
We got to come out of it, right? Come out of the audio.
Okay, and then you hit that with that.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so there you have some audio from Quincy Roche from today's practice, meaning Tuesday's practice, talking about what the single digit means to him, and talks about how he still has some work cut out for him as a pass rusher. In that time, Graham Foley texted us with his prediction, 27-9.
27-9, so 3 field goals. He likes East Carolina's kicker in this. We didn't really talk that much about East Carolina's defense. I'll just say they do have a really good defensive line.
Yeah.
Chance Purvis already has 7.5 tackles for loss. The real guy you got to look out here for, I'm going to butcher his last name, is Kendall Futtrell. He's already got 23 quarterback pressures. He's got 6.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. He's hurried the quarterback 8 times into bad throws. So he's one to watch out for. It's going to be another big game for Temple's offensive line. East Carolina's secondary, their safety, Daniel Charles, very bad in coverage. Might see Temple target him.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit of basketball recruiting before we get to the mailbag here. We've been mentioning Obina and Akili Keelan's name over the last several weeks. Over the weekend, he committed to Marshall.
Yikes.
So had talked to a couple different sources about this. Now, you never know where the truth lies on this stuff.
Somewhere in the middle, John.
Yeah, usually somewhere in the middle.
Joker's to the left of me. Joker's to the right.
Steelers wheel stuck in the
Here
middle.
I am.
Jerry Rafferty.
Stuck in the middle.
Great song.
With you. People think of what, Reservoir Dogs when they think of that?
Yes. Yeah. Mid to late 90s movie, right?
Early 90s. Tarantino.
Yeah. Everybody was in college back then, had that poster up on their wall.
I think I was 4 years old, John.
Well, it is what it is. Anyway, what the hell were we talking
92,
about?
I was 3 years old.
Yeah, we're talking about how do we get on
Stuck in the middle, the truth, Obina.
Oh, somewhere in the middle of the truth. Anyway, yes. A couple sources I talked to about this said that Temple stopped recruiting him a couple weeks ago. I understand that people will be pessimistic when they hear about that. So he is headed to Marshall. Another source I spoke with said that his family, I don't know if they were holding out for a West Virginia offer. There was talk that he may prep and go to West Virginia, but it seemed that staying home was a priority. I know Temple liked him a lot. It sounds like a couple weeks ago they basically had said, "Hey, where are you going with this?" Sounds like they didn't get the answer they liked. So that source has never really let me down. I understand why people are going to be frustrated by not getting them. We'll see what happens. They do have an official visitor coming in this weekend.
Or visitors, who knows?
Yeah. Check out our message board for that. We're going to tip our cap to our subscribers there and tell you to check out the message board. If you are not subscribing yet, you're missing out. So
relatively newish name.
Yes.
So it does kind of lend some credence to, hey, maybe they did kind of move on. They're moving on to their options. But I would check out owlscoop.com, the authority on all things Temple athletics.
You almost
for
had
the
that
name
one.
and the information.
Almost had that one.
This weekend's visitor.
Yeah, and we'll have some more basketball content for you soon. They have started practicing, so we'll try to get over to Pearson McGonigal Hall to talk to some of the players and coaches as the season approaches. Let's look at the mailbag now. Got several questions on the message boards. A couple from Twitter. Heard from our good friend Greg Payon here.
Hey,
heard from Pat Egan in this round of questions. Here's the first one here from Temple fan. What's required to get Russo going? Has the issue been him relying too much on his arm strength, or has it been an issue of coverage recognition? Yeah, we talked about this earlier. We'll do something here. We'll actually play this clip. This is Anthony Russo talking to me and some other reporters, but I had asked the question about why he's forced a couple of interceptions. So this is Anthony Russo, in his own words, talking about that pick on Saturday that he tried to force in. It was intended for Isaiah Wright, cost him some points in the end zone in a different game. Might really hurt him. Didn't on Saturday, but yes, it is arm strength, arm talent. But here's Anthony Russo talking about that in his own words.
Reservoir Dogs only made $2.8 million in the box office.
Yeah, then it became like same thing with
cult classic.
Same thing with didn't Pulp Fiction start out slow too? I think it's probably made a lot of money over the years.
Sure. No, they made $110 million in the box office.
Oh wow!
In the U.S. Yeah, it was the first indie film ever to surpass 100 million.
All right.
So you were a little off on that one.
All right, next question comes from Magster from the message board. First, should we be concerned about Aaron's recruiting after missing out on our 3 major forward targets? And do you know of any recruits he is pursuing who are of equal size and talent? Second,
yes, check our message boards.
Yeah, check our message board, Magster. You can. You are a subscriber. You will see on the message board we're talking about the official visitor coming in this weekend. Second, we are going to need a center next year. What players are there who we have a reasonable shot to land?
Start with the first part. Should we be concerned about Aaron's recruiting?
To be determined. I could kind of go both ways on this. If you were going to be critical of Dunphy, if you thought that you were hoping that Aaron was going to get some instant impact guys, you could say on one hand, okay, right around the time he's announced, he brings in a couple of guys who could be impact transfers. We'll see. You might have to wait a year to watch Jake Forrester and Ty Strickland. Getting Josh Pierre-Louis is a big pickup. The pessimist there will say the only reason you got him is because UNLV's former coach got fired.
Right.
Still had to get him over some programs that were closing in on him. So I'll give him credit for that. I hear people when they say this because it still seems like they're laboring a little bit. You didn't go out and knock out 3 targets, get them done by August. I'll be interested to see what Aaron can do after he has a full season under his belt. Will they have an identity? Will they have a discernible identity, a discernible culture that people will relate to? I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship this year, but they seem to be getting in early on a lot of guys. They do have, we put this out on Twitter, so it's not an exclusive thing that was on the message boards. They have Zach Hicks coming in for an official visit, so they're in early on him, but I think it's fair to raise an eyebrow. They didn't get, they recruited Mikhail Brown-Jones, I don't know if they stopped recruiting him, but they kind of get back in on him. He was a VCU lean. He ends up at VCU. Whatever happened, you had Obina in for an official visit, so you can't say you didn't like him. He's going to Marshall. So, yeah, I think there's some cause for concern. I still think this class could come together. We'll see.
Yeah, I would say this is going to, if I had to gamble on this, I would say this is one of those situations where if you look back at this next spring, you're probably going to say, okay, they had a decent recruiting class. They got Jaleel Wyatt, who was absolutely a priority for them, and then they filled in those other 2 spots. Maybe it's with the guy that's on our premium message board right now and then somebody else. And you'll go, okay, that's a decent class for his first real class. I think it's the people, and this is me preaching to the choir because we're also in the mud with this. It's the people that are living and dying with every step with this that's going to go, oh, they missed out on that guy, and they missed out on that guy. And that's absolutely fair because they did miss out on some of these guys. Yeah. Did they stop recruiting Obina? Sure. But that's also when they started getting answers that they didn't want, they stopped recruiting Obina. I think if Obina had tried committing on his official visit, they would have taken him in a heartbeat. So it becomes a situation where, in the end, I think they're going to end up filling this class with some talented guys. It just might not necessarily have been their first targets, and it's not up to me to determine if that's a success or not. It's not up to the fans to determine if that's a success or not, but it's going to be determined on the court whether or not it's a success or not.
Yeah, I think part of the equation here, again, we're not talking about this current class. We did mention, I think a couple weeks ago, right? We did mention that Damian Dunn did get hurt on the offseason, has a broken bone in his foot.
Big shout out to the guy that took that information and then put it on competing websites.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. There we go. par for the course.
Yeah.
But he may or may not be back for the start of the season, but they're really, really high on him. If he contributes as much as I think he can this season, then I think, again, you got to tip your cap to Aaron there.
Right.
You get him while you're smack in the middle of that transition with Fran Dunphy. Have every reason to believe that he could play a lot of important minutes for them this year. So Again, I think it's fair. I think it's still to be determined, but I think people who are maybe hoping, and I'm not saying that Magster was saying exactly this, but I do think that there are some fans who were hoping that Aaron was going to make the same type of impact as Penny Hardaway, and I just don't think that's just not going to happen. Yeah, Penny already had his own AAU team. I think Penny had, definitely not trying to smear Aaron's NBA career. He was in the league for 13 years, had a lot of great moments. Penny was a little bit more larger than life, had his own shoe and everything. Was entrenched in the AAU scene down in Memphis. So we'll see. But we'll see how the rest of this class goes. What players do they have who are a reasonable shot at to land in terms of bigs? We'll see. We'll see how things shape up in the early period. I think they could look at someone in the spring, or maybe they have a couple of potential transfers or grad transfers in mind that they're keeping an eye on. They can't exactly tamper, but people have a way of letting coaches know who's going to be available. From what I have been able to gather, I think that they like what they have coming back in terms of getting Hamilton back, getting Jake Forrester back. They still look at, I know they're not back to the basket bigs, not that too many people play that way anymore, but you are bringing Dre back. You are bringing J.P. Mormon back. I know they're more forwards, but I think with this class, they really, really want to get a shooter as much as anything else. So the guy they have coming in this weekend could potentially fill that void for them. So we'll see in terms of bigs. I would kind of just be throwing names at the wall. I think they could be looking at a certain JUCO guy in this area who committed somewhere previously before. We'll see what happens there. TU Owls 37, I have heard McKee has come off to recruits as, quote, doing them a favor by even talking to them. Is this something that can be corroborated in any way from your interactions with Temple recruits, or is it most likely a one-off? In no way am I saying this is the case, because I've already had great experiences speaking with Aaron, but figured it was worth passing by you guys as we've been swinging and missing on recruits recently. That's the first I've heard of that.
I've never heard of that with recruits. So when we got this question, I did a little bit of digging on this, and I heard a little bit of maybe some of the third-party people in college basketball haven't always been thrilled with the way that Aaron's talked to them. Not that it's ever been a rude situation, but maybe more of just he's not exactly kowtowing to me. I don't really care, to be honest. Mm-hmm. If he was all of a sudden being rude to a recruit's family, I get that. Mm-hmm. That would be cause for concern. But if he's not necessarily getting back to certain people and stuff like that, I don't really care about that. I actually kind of prefer that over maybe Fran Dunphy's I'm everybody's uncle, I'm everybody's grandpa. Look at me, he's just a great guy to talk about life with and not commit to. Mm-hmm. So I think Aaron McKee, if you're going to play into and buy into he coached in the NBA, played in the NBA, he is bigger than life sometimes, and sometimes he has to play that role.
Yeah, and I've said this before, not to go way too far back, but when Aaron first got here, he said, I am not expecting to walk into everybody's living room and have everybody just fall over and commit to me. I don't expect people to remember me like they would talk reverently about LeBron James and Steph Curry and these guys. But look, unless we are literally sitting in on these home visits, we don't truly know. But you talk to the guys that he has gotten. If you guys listened over the summer, I talked to Damian Dunn for about 45 minutes. He loved his interaction with Aaron. His father loved his interaction with Aaron. Damian openly admitted, hey, I didn't know who he was at first. And he said, my dad was like, yo, you just talked to Aaron McKee. And then he Googled him. But Damian's talked about how Aaron has his presence when he walks in the room. Aaron was a factor in getting Jake Forrester here as a transfer. We'll see what happens with Jake. Ty Strickland. Aaron was a factor, obviously, in Aaron coming here, the relationship that he had with his father. I agree with you. I think that if there is, I think that Aaron will be a little less likely to, here in Philly, some AAU coaches will tell coaches, hey, you need to recruit this kid for the bounce back, meaning stick with him. And when he goes away and realizes that he may not like it away from home, he can come back. I don't think Aaron, I say this generally speaking, you never know, I don't think Aaron is interested in being a doormat where that's concerned. I kind of agree with you. I like that too.
Right.
He has not won a national championship. Temple has not been to a Sweet 16 since 2001, so he's got some work to do, definitely. But I have not heard that specifically from anybody. I have not heard about him, doing them a favor by even talking to them. I don't know what specific instance you're talking about. I'm not doubting your source, but they put a lot of time and energy into recruiting a lot of guys. But again, if they indeed did back off of a guy like Obina, it was first like basically crap or get off the pot, I kind of like that if I'm them. They put a lot of effort into recruiting Dante Scott. They certainly didn't lose out on him for a lack of effort. They certainly haven't lost out on certain guys for a lack of effort. But I do think there is a touch of Aaron, like, he knows he has to get in the weeds with the AAU coaches and different people who are involved in recruiting. But I also think he is going to be real with people. That the difference is he might have a little bit more of a presence to him because he played in the NBA. But without knowing specifically who you're talking about, I can't really say that I've heard that. So we'll see. Next question from Greg Paone on Twitter at GPO121. Of course, Greg used to write for us, used to work for Comcast Sportsnet. Will you guys pay me to advertise this podcast with my body? I can't afford my mortgage.
How much do you think like an owlscoop.com logo on Greg's forehead would go for?
Greg, where you? I mean, it depends on where he's hanging out.
Right, like I need return on my investment.
Yeah,
like, if
you're just living in Conshohocken, is that where he is?
Sure. If I don't know, Greg.
He's going up and down Fayette Street with like a logo. Maybe,
like I need high visibility. If you're working in Center City and you go when you walk around City Hall 3 times a day, it's just part of stretching your legs. And yeah, I'm gonna get value for that. But if you're just going to work and coming back and hanging out, then no, I'm not seeing the value on this, Greg, and I'm gonna pass on this opportunity.
I still love you, Greg, but I agree with Kyle. But I appreciate the question.
I mean, besides, I already have Owl Scoop tattooed across my stomach, Tupac style. So this ship has already sailed.
I would maybe pay to see that. How would Meg feel about that?
The authority on Temple Athletics.
So that's a painful tattoo, isn't it?
It's a very long day. Multiple sessions.
Where are you getting that done?
Multiple sessions in the chair. Yeah.
Are you a good guy in Glenside or?
There's a Glenside tattoo guy right near one of my favorite bars. I've walked by.
You're ink guy.
Never got a tattoo.
Just bring in the logo. Be like, I got it.
Yeah, just a big circle. Owlscoop.com.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get tattoos at some point.
Get through again, Temple Athletics.
Next question on Twitter. At Matt Deebs. Any word on how Trav Betty and Kanique Bonner-Stewart look behind the scenes? Great question. I'll completely admit that I have not asked about them recently. They're getting, obviously not getting the majority of the reps in practice, but I don't know. That honestly gives us something to ask about next week. I mean, I know that they like both guys, but it'll be interesting looking forward depending.
Rewinding the clock a month.
Right.
Trad Betty got a lot of praise during those couple weeks that he was number 2 quarterback when Anthony Russo was out.
Right.
And Mike Yuremevich and Craig Harmon were also during that time quick to be like, Kanique doesn't really count. He's a freshman. He's still learning how to be a quarterback. So I think that they're happy with Trad's development. I can't say that I've asked about him in the past couple weeks since the season started, but I think that he's a guy that they're high on in the future.
Yeah, and I think when they've talked about Kanique, again, remember Kanique Bonner-Stewart came in a semester early, graduated early, came in as a mid-year enrollee, has had the benefit of spring practice, but again, he's very, very young. So great question. We will try to ask about them in the next couple weeks. A couple more questions here. These come from Pat Egan, our friend at 97.5, the Fanatic. He has 3 text message questions for us. Now, he admits, he got one in after last week's show, so he said, ask this one anyway. Now, this was after, the first question here was after the Buffalo game, so he was a little angry with the offense, but he said it still stands, wanted me to ask it. Is this the offense we can expect for the rest of the season? An out route on first down, and a run on second, and an out route on third down. Seems very vanilla and predictable, much like Steve Adazio's run, pass, punt offense back in the day. Was NIU's offense this creative under Mike Yuremevich? Talked about this a little earlier. I would think it's by design, right?
Yeah, I think especially with Georgia Tech, it was by design. I mean, Buffalo, which is the game he asked about after, or game he asked after this. The game he asked this question after, I think there was a little bit there. But I to be honest, it's kind of eerily familiar to 2012 with Steve Adazio, when I remember talking in 2012, people were like, well, they haven't unveiled the full offense yet. They're holding that for Penn State. They're holding that for conference play. I wonder. I don't think this is the case. I think there's enough talent in this offense they're going to put up some numbers, but we still haven't seen jet sweeps. We still haven't seen all this other stuff that they've been setting up the entire season for they haven't done. So I would expect, maybe not on Thursday, but maybe by later, a couple weeks from now, that you expect this offense to be firing and better.
Yeah. Question number 2. And go-to chain restaurant on the road and one that you stay away from.
I know what your go-to chain restaurant on the road is.
I know what you're going to say, right?
Go ahead.
P.F. Chang's.
Yeah, so we were in Vanderbilt in 2014. Nashville, great place, great barbecue, great music, great bar scene, everything great. The 36 hours we were there, Johnny here said, let's just go to P.F. Chang's. And that's what we did. We ate at P.F. Chang's, went back to the hotel, went and covered a game, went until like 2 a.m., flew home the next day.
Yeah.
Only
We did have barbecue in the press box.
Yeah, so we had Press Box Barbecue and P.F. Chang's. Great Nashville experience. When I talk to people, they're like, oh, have you been to Nashville? I was like, yeah, I was there for a couple of days once. Oh, did you go to this place? That? I'm like, nope, didn't leave Vanderbilt's campus and didn't go outside of a P.F.
Yeah, I mean, in
Chang's.
interest of full disclosure, I had you're not going to care about this.
Nope.
I've been there for a conference before, had a lot
Yeah,
of great
sounds like
barbecue.
a you thing. What about me?
It is a me thing. I agree. Again, didn't I say to you at the time? I was like, I think this will. If I go out and eat barbecue before the game,
You ruined my Nashville experience for me.
Well, I think the weather ruined your Nashville experience. The game was over at like 2 a.m, right?
Well, yeah, but I would have felt better if I had a stomach full of brisket.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I do like P.F. Chang's as a chain place.
We actually talked about this. This is a good. He mentions on the road, but I'm going to talk about a chain place I used to go to a lot locally. Used to go to the Chili's on City Ave a lot. I thought it was the perfect location. I don't think any of my relatives listen. I thought it was the perfect location for like college dating if you were a Temple student because it required you to drive somewhere. So you had the talk before you got to
Claire's
there.
in Italy right now.
We'll
send this to her.
You would pay like $26 for 2 entrees. You would come back, and since you drove, you're required to drop the girl off. There's another situation there. Everything works out fine. I thought it was perfect. I frequented that Chili's. I probably went on like 6 first dates there in my time at college.
You did not take Meg there, though, right?
No, I took Meg there.
Oh, you did?
That wasn't our first date, but one of our earlier... I told you this because I mentioned this to Meg a couple weeks ago when this came up, and I said, I'm sorry if I'm ruining this for you, but like, you weren't the only girl I ever took to Chili's on City Ave. And she looked at me deadpan, my very pregnant wife, and said, I wasn't holding any type of like luster in my mind that it was special that I went to a Chili's on City Ave. Like, I understood that this was just like a methodical process.
I think of that when I drive home sometimes.
So I'll mention that. Outside of that, I worked at Applebee's, so like I'm not a big Applebee's guy. But I ate a lot of Chili's. I mean, I ate a lot of Chili's. I ate a lot of chicken fingers at Applebee's because it used to be an all-you-can-eat chicken fingers thing during the time, and I got half off because I was an employee, so we would do like an unlimited chicken fingers.
I think we ate at an Applebee's up outside of East Hartford once.
People always complain about things like Chili's and Applebee's and say, "Oh, they just warm it up in the microwave." One, that's not necessarily true. But two, if it was, how can I get food microwave that tastes that good? Like, if they're just microwaving these chicken tenders or these burgers or whatever, what do I have to buy that I can just microwave that and get that same product?
I don't know. Do we really have a go-to chain restaurant on the road? I don't think so. Sometimes it's like if you're driving back, it's whatever you can get at a rest stop, which is the choices there are unfortunate.
Roy
Rogers,
seafood.
Yeah, at the Maryland House.
I'll tell you, the only time I ever really eat like McDonald's or Burger King is on Alice Creek road trips.
Yeah.
Other than that, we always stop like Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks on the way there.
Yeah, I mean, Graham was so excited to try
Tim Hortons.
Yeah, Tim Hortons, which I thought was just okay.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, so I don't know. Good question, Pat. Third question for Pat Egan. Why is Jeff Collins so hated? The guy left for his dream job, a dumpster fire of a situation for a head coach. He won and recruited well, and we act like he was Bobby Wallace. I don't get it. I don't agree that Georgia Tech is a dumpster fire of a situation for a head coach. I did verify. I was like, you talking about Georgia Tech? And he said, yeah, just because they're rebuilding. So why is Collins so hated?
I think a lot of his recency bias. Like, it's still relatively fresh. Like, despite all the highs and lows of the past since he left, I mean, he only left 10 months ago. Right. So I think a lot of it's just, oh, this guy just left us for a job. I think another part of it is the fact that he's back already. Like, he came back and played a game already, so that added to it. But I think the real overlapping reason or umbrella reason for this, and I'll preface this by saying that Jeff Collins was never anything but good to me. I think they went in such a different direction with Jeff Collins compared to other coaches that kind of rubbed people some wrong ways. Like, you went no frills with Al Golden, no frills with Steve Addazio, no real frills with Matt Rule. It's all of a sudden somebody that was very conscious about marketing the program and doing things like that. And that rubbed people some wrong ways, so they didn't know how to deal with it when he was their coach and he was winning. When he went 8-4 in the regular season and he was winning as that coach with those gimmicks, they didn't really know how to process it. And then once he left, that just gave them an excuse, a reasoning to be like, well, I didn't like that anyway. And now I can say that he's, look at these capri pants and look at this. And, oh, man, like, gimmicky Captain Capri. Yeah. So I think a lot of it's just, it's like when, to be blunt, it's like when you get dumped by a girl. Yeah. A buddy of mine always talks about how he says, like, you never, with an ex-girlfriend, you never like the boy after, right? Like, the guy she dates after is an asshole. The guy she dates after that, you don't care about. Like, whatever, it's in the past. It's a long time. I'm glad she's happy. It's the immediate guy after that you're pissed at.
Yeah.
So you got left. He's at Georgia Tech. You're probably, I hope this guy fails. I hope he goes 1-11. I hope he gets fired. If he went from Georgia Tech, went 8-4, and then somehow got the Alabama job, I think people would be like, oh, yeah, he used to coach here. That's great. But right now, it's too fresh.
Yeah, I think the stuff that people kind of rolled their eyes at and chuckled at now, they're annoyed by it. The Waffle House stuff.
He had a Waffle House cup after the game in the tunnel of the lake.
Yeah,
That's a little too much.
Yeah, did not see. Saw Chris Weezan. I like Weez. He's a good dude. He came up and gave me a hug, talked to me, just asked him how life was down there. He said it's good. He said miss Philly, which a lot of coaches tend to say. Jeff, I'm sure, is happy down there because he's an Atlanta guy. Said, hey Jeff, what's going on? As we were walking up, he looks at me, just stares at me.
I didn't think he looked.
Gives me a fist pound, and then just didn't say anything, which was weird. But
didn't say a word to you.
Yeah, I mean, I again, same thing. He always treated me well. I think he was a little gimmicky. We would always kind of laugh. I mean, his Tuesday press conferences were almost a half hour long because he had a 10-minute long opening statement, and don't miss the money down stuff. But I mean, he is very much in transition down there. But again, I think I agree with you. Recency bias is a good way of putting it.
I'll be curious to see what that program looks like, what people's perception of Collins is like, and where Temple's like when it's 2023 or 2024, whenever they go back down to Atlanta to play the return of that home and home.
Yeah. Next question comes from C.H. Evans on the message board. This may have been done before. This is interesting. Maybe we should parse this out over the next couple of weeks. This may have been done before, but would be interested in your thoughts on an all-time Temple football team. You could make it a bit more interesting and narrow it to players who have gone on to the NFL. Maybe we should just throw some names around them. Maybe between now and next week, get some homework.
No, to be honest, I think this is a good idea, and I don't want to completely punt on this, but I'm going to completely punt on this. I think this is prime off-season material. Mm-hmm. I think this is something that we'd want to carve out a long time too, because I mean, especially with football, you're talking 22. Like we're doing like a draft that's 22 players per person.
Mike Mudrick and I did an all-time Temple basketball draft.
A lot more
and
management.
People liked it. John Baum, literally, when he saw Mike Mudrick again, he said, "Thank you for drafting me," which tells you how nice John Baum was. Sorry, John. Still around.
I mean, I would think this is something that we can really like carve out time in. It's just that I don't want to do this half-assed. Like if we did this right now, I'd be like, oh, Tyler Matakevich. And
give me just three names.
In what? Like that's the thing. This is
offense, defense, and special teams.
It's a stupid way of framing it. Oh, give me an offensive player. The best offensive player of all time. Okay, Paul Palmer. He almost won the Heisman. Your turn, John. I think this is half-assed. I'd rather do this. We actually sit down and you go snake draft and you figure it out because you just gave me number one pick. And what? I'm going to have number one defense
Steve
too?
Watson, wide receiver from the Denver Broncos. I for whatever reason, had a bunch of Steve Watson football cards when I was younger. I had no idea.
You're just going to ignore my rant. Just keep doing this. Okay, so snake draft. John. Now you have number one defensive choice. Who's your all-time defensive player?
Receiver. Number one all-time defensive player. I mean, stat-wise, I know he's not a starter in the NFL. I mean, stat-wise, you kind of got to go Tyler, right?
That's the question, John, because we never established criteria for this.
Right.
Are we going solely off college stuff?
Upset,
or are we going off him where he says maybe you narrow it to players who have only gone to the NFL? I don't know, John.
Well, Todd Bowles could still be up there.
You just throw out Steve Watson because of his NFL career, and then you immediately discredited Tyler's NFL career. You're not consistent with your criteria.
God, you're annoying me already.
I just think that we need to go through this process. But okay.
Right. I love the question.
It's a great
idea. I think we need
But we need to actually sit down and do it.
All right. Do like the question.
In the off season.
In the off season.
When we had nothing else and it's just us going cabin fever, stir crazy, staring at each other.
In the off season, you're gonna have a kid.
Yeah, which we'll have to discuss the logistics of as I actually talked to, but I don't think I'm even going to cover basketball at all this year, to be 100% honest with you. So, yikes.
We'll be fine. Or will we? Or will we?
Some have called me the heart and soul of OutScoop.com, the authority on Temple Athletics.
I need a name.
I'm referring to myself as that.
All right, well, that'll do it for this week. Thank you to Graham for sticking with us for half
Joe
an hour.
Klecko would have been my pick, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Big Joe. Mm-hmm. Chester, PA product. St. James High School product.
Would not be allowed to play college football now because he played semi-pro football under a fake name during the off seasons to get paid.
Yeah. I'd throw his, no, you're going to hate me for it. I'd throw his son in there, too.
Yeah,
not as the top pick.
Sure, but yeah.
Yeah.
If we had to choose 11 defensive players each, then yes, he would be drafted.
Joe played with Mark Gastineau. What were they called when they were with the Jets?
I know this. Crap. No, I know this. The something of defense, board of defense. No, what the hell am I thinking of? Sack Exchange.
Sack
New York
Exchange,
Sack
yes,
Exchange. That's
yes,
it. I knew
yes,
it was a
it.
New York pun.
Yeah, so yeah, Joe was a hell of a player. Again, thank you guys for listening, for submitting mailbag questions. Really appreciate it. We will talk to you next week.
What am I thinking of? Board of defense? Am I just making this up?